Welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with Daniel.
And Daniel.
And today we're going to be doing another one of our top 8 debates. And this is going to be a fun one. What are your thoughts on these style of games? Specifically, dexterity games.
You know, at first I thought I didn't like them, but I actually have really come to enjoy dexterity games. To a certain extent, there are some games on this list that I don't like because of their dexterity, but more and more when I hear dexterity games themselves, I get more excited for them. So, like one of the games on our list, Rhino Hero, I enjoy the mess out of that game. Tumbling Dice is my favorite dexterity game to the fact that I have a bootleg version a friend made me.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's one of the weird things about this game. This is kind of like the style of board games that isn't seen as a gamery game, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of them that are respected by gamers, and then at the same time, for some reason, looked down upon as
Case
a
in point,
genre.
there's a dexterity game that was supposed to come out earlier, but because of all this mess, has been pushed back, and you can pre-order it, and it's a Flickin' Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Sonoran by
Sonora.
Petasaurus. I'm actually looking forward to that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the flick and right aspect of it is tried and true. There was another one that I saw recently from the Gamma Trade Show where I forget the name of it, but the idea is you are doing warfare and you have like a neoprene mat as your board, and there's these like half spheres that you can put on top of them as like barriers to block it, or you can put under them to make 3D terrain. So you have hills and mountains you have to climb over. That's cool.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm not a huge fan for dexterity, but I've come to grow to appreciate them.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to it. Like again, there's another one on here that I'm okay with. That's on our top 8. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 8 games I'm actually a big fan of, and one of them I'm just kind of on.
Yeah. I'm curious to know which one that'll be, but I'm sure you'll bring it up when it comes up. Yeah, no, I like all of these games. This is going to be a very interesting debate.
It is.
So
Hopefully we can keep it civil.
I think we will. Some of our
I just
categories.
gotta remember to take my bias out of my favorites.
Right. I mean, our ease of play, art, or meaningful choices, replay value, immersion. I feel like those are going to be very similar on a lot of them.
Important too.
Yeah, exactly. So, with that being said, we're going to bring back our "What Have You Been Playing" segment. So, Daniel, What have you been playing?
So, quite interesting. This week, I've got a couple solo games in of Everdell, just to get familiar with the rules before I teach it to the wife and stuff like that. Really enjoyed that one. And you'll actually be happy to hear, I got the wife to play Archaeology last night, the new expedition.
Nice. What'd you think?
And so she liked it so much that she beat me so handily in the first game, she's immediately said, let's play again.
Ah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Just because it went so quick. And so, like, my first game of Archaeology went poorly. As I said, she beat me 110 to 67. And it's just because, in an aspect of push your luck, I was trying to hold my set collection together.
Yeah.
And all I kept drawing up was pot. Just pot shards. So, like, my biggest points came from pot shards and parchment, because those are the only cards I was drawing up. And the one time I drew up a Pharaoh's Mask, she stole it from me.
Of course.
She got a thief on her turn and stole my Pharaoh's Mask.
That's awesome.
But the immediate game we played again, and I beat her 113 to 88, because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to nickel and dime this. I had Pharaoh's Mask in hand. I was able to buy a Pharaoh's Mask because of the cards in my hand. Grabbed the second one and immediately just put them both down. I was like, nope, I'm just taking that 15 points right then. Grabbed another Pharaoh's Mask and I immediately played it. I'm like, I don't care, because we were playing the Buried Ruins on the second game. And there was already one out on the board, and I'm like, nope, I'm just going to play this right now. Because if I get this stolen and she gets that one...
Yeah, it's already game over at that point. Yeah,
and the last game that we played was Keyforge.
Yeah.
I
Tell
think
us
we
your
talked
thoughts on
about
that
it a
one.
little earlier in the week, but we did play Keyforge on Monday and really enjoyed it. We got a couple of the rules wrong, but that's the whole point of the first play to work out the rules. And mind you, we don't have like the base set, so it just has like a quick reference page on it. Rather, yeah, that's the exact one we have. It doesn't. It has a quick reference rule book rather than a actual rule book. So there was terms on there that we didn't truly understand until we looked it up online or I watched
Yeah.
Rodney Smith watch it played.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also this is the third set that they've made. One was Call of Archons, the second one, which I forget what it was called, and then now it's Worlds Collide. So it's there's two of the factions are brand new in this set alone. So and with that, like there was one or two mechanisms that I remember looking through the cards, and I don't remember that wasn't in the original set. So I'm gonna have to refresh myself on that if I want to play with these.
Yeah, so there's a few in here that were interesting to me, but I actually really enjoyed it, and so much. The wife likes Magic the Gathering. She enjoys it. There's reasons why she never played too much into it. One, she got into it too late. Two, I hate to say it, I'm not saying all Magic people are bad, but just the Magic the Gathering crowd can be a little non-inclusive per se.
Sure.
And so she wanted to avoid that. And two, or another one is she didn't know how to deck build. So this one, she still gets that Magic the Gathering feel without having to work into the
Right.
getting the cards that properly built into it. And she really enjoyed it to the point where she's like, you can buy us more factions.
Yes. That's awesome.
You don't have to tell me twice to buy more board games.
Right? Exactly. It's
Also, other than what I've played, I've recently just bought The Crew. It should be coming in soon. Also, just picked up, pre-ordered the new Back to the Future game that we've talked about with Prospero Hall. So I should be getting that once it's released. And then I just went ahead and, because Miniature Market's deal, bought Nations.
I considered it. I was also going to get the Colonists as well because that was another cheap deal. But by the time that the wife finally gave me permission to order a game or two, it was already sold out. So I was like, I could buy Nations, but you're already getting it, and I have Nations, the dice game, so...
Yeah, well, it's funny because you talk about that. Everybody says Nations, the dice game, is just as fun as Nations, the base game. But I want a really good... I have Tapestry, but that's more of an engine builder with Civilization tied into it.
Yeah.
But I've been wanting to get a Civilization. I've been looking at Through the Ages 2nd edition. Everything I've read about Nations, it actually replaces Through the Ages 1st edition because it streamlines it so much easier.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing too. When next time that we play, I'll have to bring over Nations, the dice game, over, and then that way you can become familiar with it. And from what it looks very similar, except instead of the dice in the dice game, you get different colored of dice. And they have different things like knowledge or food or whatever that they have more symbols of. So of course, if you get a knowledge die, you're going to be going up better in knowledge. Whereas in Nations, the original game just has a whole heap of cards and resource tokens. So it's effectively the same thing, just less random.
Okay.
So
I forgot to mention I played 2 more games. I played solo play of Terraforming Mars, because I wanted to learn the new expansions that I have. I have Prelude and Venus Next in there, so I wanted to learn those, so I did the solo mode of that. And I also played the solo mode of Paper Towels, because if you have the expansion, you can play the solo mode. My God, the solo mode in Paper Towels is ridiculously tough. It is like, wow.
It's not even close, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, so you've gotten in definitely more gaming than I. I've been continuing my copy of Bargain Basement Bathysphere. I finished all of chapters 0 and 1 about last week, and I still wanted to keep going more. And so I only printed those 2 chapters just to see if I was going to like it. And that was already 18 pages of it. And so I think altogether it's something like 78 pages total, and I was already out of ink. So I had to go buy an ink cartridge to print out the next X number of chapters. But I have the whole thing now, and I play it about once every day, give or take.
For me right now, I'm actually learning Western Legends. I have the board all set up and everything too. So.
Oh wow! Okay. Is there a solo mode for that?
No, I'm gonna play a 2-player version of it just to kind of get the. That's what I tend to do. Sometimes I'll play games by myself just to learn the rules.
Right.
And how the mechanic works, and try two different I can't think of the word right now. Like just two different ways of play, just for I can learn how different mechanisms work in this game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But me and my son and my wife just finished the expansion for Space Base, Emergence of Shy Pluto,
Nice.
and so it's a saga expansion, as they call it, where they introduce story elements that you play throughout the game, and they add modules into it. Um, I mean, technically, it's a legacy game, right?
Yeah.
Where, in a way, but ever since I saw Eric Martin's review of My City, which if you haven't watched, you need to watch it. He brings up a very valid point, and why he says Reiner Knizia should never design legacy games, because the and it's actually, he makes up a very interesting point. He's like, look, I'm gonna spoil all of these things for you. I'm gonna tell you what every module has. He was like, why am I doing that? Because it doesn't matter. The way you play game 1 is not going to change knowing how game 5 introduces a mechanism.
And so you're saying Shy Pluto's a lot like that?
So, yeah, in a way, because the thing is, I could tell you right now, and I'm not gonna, because I'm gonna be nice about it, but I could tell you everything that the expansion has module-wise, and that's not gonna affect how you play it when you first play the game. Because there is no permanent changes. Everything gets added into there. You're not surprised by anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting take on legacy games as a whole. It's like, well, I could play this. Is it a legacy game if there's no permanent choice? Where like Pandemic Legacy, you've played that. You know what I'm talking about without spoilers or anything. If you knew what was going to happen
there's a big change,
if you knew what was going to happen in the last few games, you're going to play the first ones very differently.
Well, it's not just that, because with Pandemic Legacy, there's a change like in the early part of the game,
Yep.
and then there's a major change halfway through the game.
Yep.
Where you're like, what just happened?
Right.
And then the change at the end of the game, it's like, what is going on here? There are massive changes that change the flow of the game too.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So it's a weird idea to go with it, but I love the expansion, by the way. First off, I should specify this. It's awesome, but I don't feel it's necessary to hide the expansion stuff. If you like Space Base, you personally, that if I bring it over, I'll probably show you the expansion stuff.
Sounds good. I love Space Base. I want to buy it.
Yeah, and that expansion is just absolutely phenomenal. It's really good. So you would have a blast with it. But we finished it, and now I think the wife wants to buy the second expansion that they made, which is just the commander box. And I don't think there's anything extra for it. I think it's just a 5th player board and a bigger board. Yeah.
But from what I'm hearing, the reason why they came out with the box, even though there's only 2 expansions, I think, because there's the Emergence of Shy Pluto. I think there's an expansion before that.
Nope.
No, it's just the commander box.
Yep.
I think there may be a few cards in there, but I think it's more for the fact because they're planning on making more expansions for Space Base.
Yeah, because I fit everything from Emergence into there, with exception. There's like a big deck of like the story cards that you don't need after you've played through it. I left those still in the original expansion box, but everything else fits in there, no problem. In fact, I even have all of the expansion stuff in one of the little sections, and I have it like kind of walled off, saying, "Hey, look, like if you don't want to see it, then that's fine. These are the 2 parts where they are, and everything else is back to normal." So
well, with restrictions getting eased here in our state of New Mexico, I think I'll start hosting game night again soon. I just got to get the okay from the wife because again, she works in a high risk facility.
Right, exactly. I couldn't agree more, and you don't know how often we go out, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you how often I go out. It's like about once a day, but it's like go through a drive-through or to walk in the neighborhood. So.
Yeah, so that's what we do. We walk through the neighborhood. That's about the only time we go out. And then if there's other people, we put our masks on.
Yep.
It's not a problem. And again, I know a lot of people's issues with the mask. For me personally, my wife works in a high-risk facility, so I'm taking every precaution that I can to protect everybody else. And that's why I wear a mask.
Yep, exactly. Your reasons. We won't get into the politics of it because I know we could start a debate if we wanted to. But
yeah, no, but I'm just saying that I want to give people a reason why I do it. One, it makes me feel better, and two, my wife works in a high risk facility, so even if she's asymptomatic and I somehow get it, it's
yeah,
this way I'm not giving it to everybody else.
right.
I don't want to be the cause for family grief.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to off from that lovely topic and right into dexterity games.
Honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions. So
Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to start it off?
I'll start us off because I have quite a few. And so when I first was looking at this, I tried to write down every different kind of dexterity game element that I can think of. So what I have right now, and if anybody in the viewing is listening to this, and you could think of any other different categories, let me know.
Also, we did put a post in Board Game Revolution. They did add games because we like to let them do that, to add games to our poll just for get ideas. So we will talk about the games that are not in our top 8 debate that they've added and get our ideas. This way we can at least go through the poll for games that we are not familiar with.
Yeah, definitely, and that's like the viewers' honorable mentions.
In a sense, yeah.
So yeah, I found that, and I'm pretty sure this is most of them. There is stacking, throwing. There's
in a sense.
Yeah, like throwing things, like flying goblins, or like beer pong, I guess, in a way, because there's games that introduce stuff like that. There's speed elements, which, if you have to do things in a fast speed, that's effectively a dexterity game. Like Jungle Speed, that's a dexterity game. Flicking, of course, that's the classic one, flicking discs or pieces. Dropping, like Dungeon Drop, or I have a few others that I'll talk about here during the honorable mentions. Listening is a very weird dexterity element. Like listening to certain things. I have a couple games where you actually have to shake something and listen to what could be in there. So that in a way is a dexterity element. And sliding, whether like tilting something like a labyrinth. There's a new game that just came out fairly recently that uses that, where you actually prop up side of the board and the main character slides around like crazy, and you're trying to maneuver stuff like that.
Man, I hated Labyrinth as a kid.
Yeah, it's basically like that, but it's like video game themed is the game, and so everybody has like a different side of the board, and all you do is push down a little lever and it slides. It's pretty cool.
Ooh, just think, because going back to one of our Chiss and Giggle topics, video games that to be made into board games. That'd be a perfect mechanic for like a Pac-Man style game. If you run into a ghost, you lose. If you get all your...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that totally would. That would be... Ooh. Anyway, that's intriguing. And so, I love it when I see a dexterity game that has a new take on something like that. Because, like, I mean, obviously, like, flicking is a really common one, and we're going to be talking quite a few of those. But, I have quite a few, honorable mentions.
I told you only 3.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna say them quick, so don't worry, they don't technically count. But the first one is Clask. It's basically air hockey with a wooden table. I love air hockey, that's why it's there. But then Shaky Manor. This is the main one I want to talk about. Shaky Manor, you have a box, and you have a bunch of different items like eyeballs, snakes, meeples, and you have a bunch of doors going between the rooms, and you have to get certain components in one specific room exactly, while just shaking around the house. It is so awesome. Oh, balancing. Yes.
Yeah, balancing is another one. You're right, at 3.
Yes. Thank you.
In fact, one of the games you mentioned was on my short list for honorable mention.
Oh, yeah? What was that?
Men at Work.
Oh, yeah, Men at Work. Have you played Hamster Roll?
No, I have not.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, go on. Let's talk to us about Men at Work.
So Men at Work was on my short list, did not make my honorable mentions, but it is one of those balancing categories. You flip a card, right? So you have to do certain things. That's the copy I've actually played. And so you got to make sure your guy can either balance something, or where he's got to go on somewhere and you got to put a beam on one or two beams, or it's so much fun. We had such a blast playing it. I remember it was nothing but a barrel of laughs while we were playing over at my house.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an awesome pick.
But it wasn't on my honorable mention. I still have my 3.
Yeah. And my other that's not on my honorable mention that I'm going to honorably mention real quick, Batik. Batik is an abstract game that was made by Gigamic, and Cosmos made another, I'm not going to say another version of it, but it's kind of inspired by it, where you have 2 plastic sheets that you can see through, and you have tangram shapes, and you're dropping them into the top, and you're trying to balance them or position them in a certain way. Batik was just simply, don't go over the top. Then if you're the person who puts your piece over the top, then you lose. But drop it, if you have certain shapes or colors touching certain walls, or you can get bonus points based on the sections that are completely different angled. That's an awesome one. But my actual honorable mention is a game called Gulo Gulo, which it's a race game really, and you're trying to move your piece to get to the nest of eggs. But it comes with a 3D nest of eggs, which is like a wooden bowl, and there's a bunch of wooden eggs in it, and there's a little egg that's on top of a stick, and that's perched in between all of the other eggs, so it's standing upright, and you have to take an egg from the nest without that thing dropping down.
Oh, okay.
So that it is a balance mechanism in a way, but if you take a certain color egg, they're different sizes, by the way, so like all the purples are smaller than like all the reds. But you're trying to get certain colors to move farther on the track. So it sounds ridiculous, and oh my god, it's a blast. It's so good.
Alright, so my first actual honorable mention is a game that you and me played at the, what was it called at the time? The Border
City.
Con or something?
Yeah, Border City.
Yeah, Border City Game Con. And this one is it was so much fun that you and me had playing it that I recommended it to a friend of mine for him and his son to play. He actually bought it when we went to Dice Tower West for him and his son to play when he got home, and they really, really enjoyed playing this game. And that's Coconuts.
It's
a really great family game to play with your kids or just other adults. All you're doing is you have this little mechanized
monkey.
Yeah. Who, he's holding out his hand. You put a coconut, and you're trying to score cups. The first one to get 5 cups wins. But you're stacking them in a way in a pyramid form that if someone gets their coconut into your cup, they get to steal it from you. So
yeah.
that there is a mechanism in there where you're trying to steal the cups to make sure someone else doesn't win, and it's basically just basketball in a sense, but using a catapult to do it. And and it's funny because once you saw that, you're like, you're putting that on your list, aren't you? And I'm like, yep, I am.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you want to make it more gamery for people, there are special abilities that you can add in for stuff to give you later on. You basically get 3 special abilities, and they do different things. Great game. Really enjoyed it. Had fun when we played it at the con. Have fun playing it when I go over to my buddy's house back in the day before all this happened, and we play it with his kid, and he'd have a blast playing it. So,
are you gonna play Flying Goblin when we get a chance?
I don't know what that is, but sure, because you usually make me play most of your games.
I don't own it. Dom does. Our mutual friend does. And it's a grid inside of the box, and it's a bunch of different rooms. Some are good, but you have these goblin meeples on a little wooden catapult that you have to launch into the box. Okay. And there's a lot more to it than that. But, yeah. I want to buy it.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Don't get me wrong. It sounds a lot of fun. Alright, your next, not honorable mention. Get into your honorable mention.
Well, I already did 2 of my actual honorable mentions. Shaky Manor and Gulo Gulo were my 2 actual honorable mentions. So my last one, don't worry, I can go on if you want me to. I have 2 full shelves of Dexterity. So, but this one was a game that was actually suggested to me from a designer, David Short, who designed Yardmaster Express and Automobiles. and he's worked with a few of those companies. He's based out of Tucson, and I met him at RinCon a few times. A real nice guy, and he suggested this to me. It's called Monster Mash, and he said that he played it with his kids all the time. And the idea of it is you have a bunch of monsters that are randomly placed throughout the board, and it's a maze, and you have to get the pawn from where it is to the next monster using with your teammate. So your teammate would be on one turn, it might be you and me, and then it'd be me and the person on my left, and then them and their next person. And you have these little sliders. You have two on each side, and I can only move the pawn left and right by sliding it. It's almost like slidey foosball. And so we're trying to navigate this maze by sliding the piece left and right, and you would move it up and down together. It's like, all right, so we need to put it on the three-eyed monster. Okay, move down. And then so we're slowly trying to do that. But if we knock him into a hole or knock him off the thing, we have to start over again. It's just absolutely a riot. The pieces could be better. I think it's actually by Inca and Marcus Brand, if I'm not mistaken. I will check. Yeah, Inca and Marcus Brand. So there it is.
It's Trap. Monster Trap. You said Monster Mash, I think. So
did I? Yeah, Monster Trap. Sorry, that's correct. I always get those mixed up. But yeah, you can see right here the little slidey thing, and you have two different slide bars on each axis.
Yeah,
it's
you
so
have
ridiculous.
shown me this.
It's ridiculous, and I absolutely love it. So Monster Trap is my next one.
All right, so I got two more honorable mentions still because, you decided to throw out all these games out there. My next one is probably one of my favorite dexterity games, and I'm noticing a trend here. I like dice in dexterity games.
Okay.
Because a lot of them, one of my favorite is dice, my second favorite is dice, and so this one is dice as well, and that is Strike. There is a reprint that adds like special powers and stuff like that into it. I forget what that one's called. Impact.
Yep.
And so all this is that you got a bowl, like they call it arena. And so what you're doing is you're throwing dice in there, and it's literally throwing dice. You're not rolling dice. You're trying to flip other dice that's in the bowl to switch them and get the same face. So if they're all sixes in there, you take out the sixes and you put them in there. If there's any dice left, then you can keep, or the next player can try to take those dice. However, if you get all of them out of there, then your opponent has to throw the next person in line has to throw all his dice in and then take out what pairs he can. If he doesn't, he's eliminated. And so it works out. However, there is also a little trick. If all those dice face roll into ones, then they're taken, which is an X and Strike. They're all X's. Once they roll into those X's, they're eliminated. Nobody gets those dice. And you keep playing until everybody's eliminated. And it's a real quick game. I've had so much fun playing this game. I really enjoyed it. I need to pick up Impact just because it's the easier one to get here in America. Strike you actually have to import because there is no American print other than Impact.
Yeah. I think most of them are used anyway. They're fairly underprint. All right, well then I can throw another one in there real quick. And this is the first dexterity game that I've seen do correctly with platforming. So I feel like a Super Mario game could actually be made off of this, and it's called Jetpack Joyride.
Ah, okay. I'm surprised you didn't put that on your normal honorable mention.
Well, I mean, I just saw it off. That's the problem with this, right? is I have so many dexterity games, and I've had so many hours of just absolutely adoring them, and yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, and that's why I backed it on Kickstarter, is because it was such a unique theme. You're speed-taking polyomino tiles that you place them on your board, trying to navigate effectively a maze like platforming style. And yeah, it works really well. I feel like that could be like a Super Mario style game, but it is based off of a platforming app where you're flying a jetpack through different things. So yeah, the rules were a little weird. There's parts of it that I think I probably would have understood better if I just had played the app before, which I hadn't. So Jetpack Joyride, phenomenal little polyomino dexterity game.
All right, and for my final honorable mention is one of the newer ones on my list here, or on the list in general, because I think it only came out last year, if I remember correctly. And this is a game that you showed me. For a while there, the shop had it on a table where anybody can play that came into the shop. And this one's called Catch the Moon.
Yep.
The reason why I like this one is, what's neat about it is you got this like starting area where you got these ladders. So if you see there on his screen, you see all those ladders. And what you're supposed to do is you roll a die, correct?
Yep.
And it tells you if you got to put one ladder on or two ladders on. It tells you specifically how you got to do it, so they can only touch one ladder. It can touch two ladders, it can touch three or something like that, depending on the dice. But you got to make sure when you put a ladder on there, it only can touch whatever it says it can touch. And so that's where the tricky part of this comes in. And so I really enjoyed it. It's a really quick game. I do want to pick this up eventually. I just haven't yet, and I think it'd be a blast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always gone down well. So if you want the next level up from like Jenga, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it right there. All right. Awesome. Well, I'll stop shouting out honorable mentions of different games, and let's jump into this.
Honorable mentions. We stop the recording,
yep.
We'll do the honorable mentions for the audience.
All right. Let's hear them.
So, from what I'm seeing here, there's only a couple that isn't in our... there's actually 3 or 4 that isn't in our thing. So, the one that has the most votes that isn't in our thing is Meeple Circus. I'm not familiar with this game at all. Never played it. And also, the only comment was about Meeple Circus is this person's, Karen's favorite. Oh, God, that poor name.
Meeple Circus. I mean, yeah, I love the circus theme, and I love dexterity games. So
yeah, I'm not familiar with Meeple Circus, so it's something I'm gonna have to look up. But apparently, it is her favorite outside of games like Ice Cool, Pitch Car, Men at Work, that are closely follow it. So we have talked about Men at Work. Ice Cool, spoiler alert, is on our list. And Pitch Car, surprised she was the only one that mentioned it in the comments or in the poll as well, because there's a big following for Pitch Car.
Yeah.
And shockingly, it just didn't get any love in this poll. I know a buddy of ours, he's been wanting to buy himself a Pitch Car set, and I think he finally pulled the trigger.
Ooh. So I know what we're doing next time we all get together.
Yeah. And so the other ones on our list here that hasn't or that isn't on our top 8 debate is Tokyo Highway. Another one I'm not too familiar with. I kind of know how it plays a little bit. I think our mutual friend Dom owns it.
I think he does. Yeah. Me and him bought it at the same time.
Yeah. So I think that's something we have to try playing. I just haven't yet. Are you familiar with Tokyo Highway?
I used to own it. It's pretty good. Basically, you're putting down these really long, thin popsicle sticks in between pillars, and they can either ascend or descend in height. And what you're ultimately trying to do is cross over other people's roads. And so, by crossing over their roads, you put out your cars, but it gets increasingly more difficult as you create the spaghetti bowl of a mess. I ended up trading it in when I got Men at Work because they both hit a similar feel for me, and I just think Men at Work did a better job at it.
So another one that's on the list here that isn't in ours is Catacombs. And I have heard good things about this one. This one, I think, if I remember correctly, Catacombs is a dungeon crawl flicking game.
Yes.
Where one person's controlling the dungeon and the rest of the people are controlling the heroes trying to fight the dungeon.
Yep, that's it.
So I actually want to play that game. I've heard good things about it. I just haven't.
Yeah, one of the neat things that they do is they have holes cut in the board, and you put big wooden discs inside of the holes, so that way they can't move, so you can bounce your pieces off of it, and that's to represent like pillars or like objects that are in stone, because you wouldn't be able to move through a wall anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really smart.
All right, so a few more coming up. There's only 1, 2, 3 more that isn't on our list. For one, you have Flip Ships.
Flip Ships, yes.
A buddy of ours actually owned this. He says it's actually a fun game. It just needs more people because he's only played the 2-player version with his wife. Looks fun. I don't know too much about it, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah.
The next one is Junk Art. Are you familiar with this? Because I'm not.
I know what it's about. It's one of those stacking games where you're trying to stack up a structure, but what makes Junk Art that much more interesting is the pieces on that are unlike almost any other game. You've seen like the ones that have like the cylinders, the ball, the cone,
Yeah.
the rectangle bricks, like all of those traditional ones. It's almost like that, but the pieces are just completely off the wall.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have seen it. I just never played it.
Right.
And finally, the very last one is one that I'm actually quite interested in, and that's Flick 'em Up. There's two versions, of course. You have the Western Flick 'em Up, the spaghetti Western style one, and then, of course, there is a Dead of Winter version of it.
Which
and
is super
so
silly.
I've heard good things about the Dead of Winter one, too, and the zombies. You know how I feel about zombies lately. But I do want to try the Western one. I heard the Flick 'em Up is actually a pretty decent game.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I played it a few times. It was fun. Yeah, it wouldn't be on my top list. That play was enough for me to know that I don't really need it, but I would rather have that Flick Warfare one.
Yeah, I know for sure I'm going to pre-order Sonoran. I just don't know when, but I want to get that one to the table once it gets here.
Yeah.
And that's another flicking game, but with roll and write aspect to it. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So you want to talk about the brackets before we take a quick break?
Sure. So we have our number 1 seed, and just to clarify, as always, our top 8 debate consists of the top 8 highest ranked games on BoardGameGeek.com based on the category that we've chosen. This is specifically at Dexterity and Actions, and the criteria for having it being on our list is Daniel and I have both had to have played it, at least enough to be familiar with it, and yeah, they have to be ranked high, and this was a very easy list for us to get
Yeah,
the top
it was.
8. We almost overshot it a few times.
Yeah.
Like, wait, we can only do 8? Darn.
All right. So number 1 seed Crocodile will be facing the number 8 seed Animal Upon Animal.
Our number 2 seed Fuse will be facing our number 7 seed Lupin Louie.
Caveat there, another thing we forgot to mention is if there is a straight up reprint of the game, it does not make the list. If Looping Louie's there, if Looping Chewie was rated higher, we would have put Looping Chewie in it. If not, then Looping Louie is the one that gets it. It just, they're too similar to have both those games go up.
Yeah.
And so just so everybody know, our number 3 seed Tumbling Dice versus the number 6 seed Ice Cool.
And our number 4 seed Rhino Hero versus our number 5 seed Terror in Meeple City.
And as always, after the first round, we will reseed, so the number 1 seed could end up facing the number 7 seed if there's an upset.
All right. So we're going to take a very, very quick break just to get the video reset, and then we will jump into it.